So now what we are left with is the skill side and also the recent project, as well as the mobile responsiveness of the page. So let's go. So after the closing content div, we'll create another div and give it a class footer content. And inside of it, we'll have two sections, the skills section and also the portfolio projects. We'll create a div for the skills and also for the portfolio. Now let's add the CSS for it. So we'll select the footer content and it's inside the container. We'll give it width 100%. Give it some padding, 0 for top and bottom and 5 rem for left and right. Set background color transparent. So now let's create this header as well as this box and the contents inside of it. So in the skills, we will create an h2 with the text skills. After this, we'll create a div with the class skill container. Inside of it, we'll create another with the class skills detail. This check circle, this text over here, and also the description of it. So for the circle, we'll create a span. Now we'll insert the checked HTML entity. Check. After this, an h3 header with the text HTML. And afterwards, we have a paragraph tag for the description. And this is hypertext markup language. So now let's add the CSS for it. We first select the skills div. Select the skills div and it's inside the footer content. We remove all padding. And we'll style the h2. We'll give the CSS for it. Now we'll style the skills container. We'll set display grid template column 1FR. We'll give it some gap. Now we are getting somewhere. Now let's style the skills detail. It's inside the skills container. Now let's style the span inside of it. We'll set display inline block. This is the styling for the span, so let's style the h3. We'll set color to orange. Now let's style the p tag. Change color to white. When we save, this is what we have. And this is what we want. So let's add the CSS, JavaScript, and also React in the HTML. So, and for that, we can just copy the skills details and paste for all the remaining items. And make the changes. So now I can run this and we have it for all of them. So now let's add the portfolio section. So now in the portfolio div, we'll create an h2 and the text is recent project. To start the styling with the portfolio div, we set padding top and bottom 0, left and right 1 rem. So let's style the h2 header. Now the text looks okay. After the h2, we'll create a div with the class project container. In it, we have one with the class project. Inside, we'll link an img. Or link an img for the project. And the alt, I can make it just image. And that is the image I have here. After the img, we'll create a div with the class project detail. It's inside of it that we have this h1, also this text, and also the button. It's rather h3. So we'll create an h3. We'll call it project 1. After this, we'll create a paragraph tag. Inside, we'll generate some lorem text. Let's say 15 words should be okay. And after the p tag, we'll create a button. The text is view on GitHub. This is how it looks when we run it. So let's add the CSS. Now let's start the styling with the portfolio container. Set display flex. Set some gap, 5 pixels. So now let's start the project div. It's inside the portfolio container. Set some padding. Now let's start the img, the image inside of the project. We are getting somewhere. Now let's start the div with the class project details. There is no S. We'll give it a width. Now let's add the CSS for the H3 inside of the project details, but we'll come back to it. Now let's start the paragraph. Project details. We'll give it padding. This is the CSS for the p text, so let's start the button. We'll set display block. Background color should be transparent. And color should be white. So when we run this, you can see we have this. So let's position it well. So in the project details, we set position absolute. Bottom, -170 pixels. Now you see it's hidden. So let's make it appear whenever we hover on this image. But let's first add some transition. 0.4 seconds. Should ease in out. Before we add the hover effect, let's make some changes. Let's make this one over here 150 instead of 170 negative. Also, let's change this thing. This is supposed to be in the HTML. We have project, not portfolio. Project container. So this as well should be project container. So now to add the hover effect, we have to take the project container, project, :hover. When we hover, we'll take the project detail. Then we'll transform it, we'll translate it on the y-axis. So transform, translate y, -170 pixels. When we save this, you can see it works now. Alright, so let's add project 2. For that, we can just copy the project and paste again. We change this to project 2, as well as the image. And if I run this, I have the 2 projects here. You also realize that we have this text over here. Thanks for visiting my website, which only appears on smaller screens. So let's add it. After the closing portfolio div, we'll create an H3 with a class thank you. And the text is thanks for visiting my website. Let's add the CSS for it. It's inside the container div. We only set display to none. So nothing has changed. Also in the container, I want to give some padding. Padding button 2 area so that it will fill the wrapper div. Now you see it fills, there is no space at the bottom again. Now we're technically done with how we want the page to look on a larger screen. So let's add that for the smaller screen sizes. And before that, what we want to do is that for this image, we want to swap it with a different image on a smaller screen so that the positions will be changed. So let's add that. And for that, we'll just replace this one with a different image. So here in the HTML, in the left content div, before the H2, we'll link an img. We'll give it a class small image. And it's going to be the same user image. So images, and it's this one. The alt text can just be image. And it looks like this. So let's add the CSS. Here in the left content, before the H2 header, we'll select the small image. We'll give the CSS for it with 100 pixels. We'll give it some border. We'll give it some box shadow. Give it some vertical displacement and horizontal displacement, as well as a blur effect and a color. So we copy the same thing and paste again. change these values to negative, the first two values to negative. The blur effect remains the same. When I save this, so we have it at the corner here, but we don't want it on the larger screen, so let's set the display to none. So display none. Now we don't have it again. Now we have to add the mobile responsiveness. Currently you can see that our page on a smaller screen isn't looking okay. So let's add the CSS for it. And for that we use media query. So we define a media query with the keyword at media. And we define the screen size, devices with max width 600 pixels. It means any device with a max width less than 600 pixels will have these stylings that we are going to define in this media query. For that, we'll start with the container div. We'll set padding bottom 1 rem. And after this, we'll take the navbar. It's inside the container. We'll remove all padding. Set padding 0. We'll take the h1 inside the navbar. We'll reduce the font size. We'll set margin left 3 pixels. Now you can see some small changes. Now let's deal with the list items. So we'll take the UL, it's inside the navbar. We'll set position absolute. Width 120 pixels. Now this is how it looks so far. Give it a background color. This RGB color code. When we save this, now you can see it looks quite okay. So we are getting somewhere. So now let's tell the LI. Set width 100%. Border button 1 pixel solid white. Now we take the close icon inside the UL. We'll set display block. Now you see we have the icon over there and also the text underline for all this. Just so we can see the navbar very well, let's move it to the right. So over here in it, we can just set right 0. Now this is where we have it. When we click, you can see that the before pseudo element is still active. So let's remove it. So after the LI, select navbar, UL, LI, colon, before. We set display to none. After this, let's take the message div, which is also in the navbar, and give it a margin to the right, 2 rem. Now let's also take the hamburger icon and set the display to block. Now it is also here. Now let's take the content div and give it some padding, 1 rem. Now we'll take the small image, it's inside the left content. Set display block. Before the image, let's take the left content itself. Set width 100%. After the image, we'll style the H2 inside the left content div. Font size is 1.3 rem. After that, we'll take the H3. Font size 1.5. Then we take the paragraph tag. Set width. Text align is center. This is how it looks. You are not seeing any significant changes because this image is still here. So once we remove it from here, it will look very okay. So now let's deal with the social media icons. It's also inside the left content. And it's left content social. Set text align to center. Now let's take the right content. And it's inside the content div. We set display now. And now everything is looking very good. So now let's deal with the footer section. So after this one, we'll take the footer content. Set padding. Text direction should be column. Now it looks like this. After this, we'll take the skills container. It's inside the skills div. Set display, flex. On a smaller screen, we'll remove the border. So we set border none. Now it looks this way. You'd realize that we have an H2 header here, but it's not showing. So we'll go back to the H2, the skills H2, and we set the color to white. Now you can see we have it here. So let's continue in the media query. So now let's deal with the portfolio side. We set padding 0. Then we'll take project container and set flex direction to column. We set margin top to REM. And after this, we'll take the project inside the project container. Set margin 0.8 REM. Now let's start the IMG inside the project. We'll set display block, margin auto. When we save, this is how it looks. Now let's start the project detail. It's inside the project. We set width, left is 10%. Now it also looks okay. Now we are left with a thank you header. It's inside the container. Set display block. Text align is center. Color is this one. And here we have it. So now let's have the list item, the UL, so that we can use JavaScript to open and close it. So instead of write 0, we make it negative 150 pixels. So now it's gone. So now we are left with the JavaScript. And to use a JavaScript, we first need to create a JavaScript file. So we'll create a new file here and call it script.js. And in the HTML, before the closing body tag, we'll create a script tag. We'll set the src to the JS file, script.js. So we can test to see if this is correctly working. So we'll create an alert statement. Hello. Alright, we have it here. So it means we have successfully connected the HTML to the JavaScript. Now we can remove this one. To start, we need to select the hamburger menu, the list items, and also the close icon. So let's do that with the JavaScript. So we declare a variable using the const keyword. We call it navList. And that will be equal to document.querySelector in quotes .navbar UL. That means the UL is inside the class with navbar. Now let's select the close icon. Should be equal to that is the class we give to it here. Let's also select the hamburger icon. What we have to do now is to set event listener on the hamburger icon so that whenever someone clicks on it, it will transform the UL into the website. So we say hamburger icon dot add event listener. It's a click event in quotes. After this, with a comma, we define an arrow function. When we click, we want to take the nav list dot style dot right should be equal to, in quote, 5 pixels. So when we head over to the website and we click this one, it should transform this one in. So we have to create a function for the close icon to, so whenever we click it, it also transforms it back to where it was previously. And for that, we can just copy this function entirely and paste again and make some changes. Instead of hamburger, we'll make it close icon. When we click on the close icon, we want to transform the list item, the navbar, back to where it was initially. Initially, it has right of negative 150 pixels. So when we save this, so now we can click the hamburger icon to open it and the close icon to close it. But it happens very fast. So let's add some transition. So in the UL, we'll add some transition, 0.3 seconds. It is in, out. Then we save. Now when we test it, it works perfectly. So everything looks well over here on this page. And on the larger screen, we have this over here working, the hover effect for the list items. We also have the focus effect for this input field, so we can do everything with it. And this works very well as we've demonstrated from the very beginning. So folks, this is basically how we've come to the conclusion of this video, how we build this single page portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and small JavaScript. If you find any value in this video so far, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this. For any question and suggestion, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I'm Daniel. Thanks for watching.